I didn't want to have to keep lying to him, Your Honor. I got tired of, being dishonest and being disrespectful in my relationship. And I gave him every option.
For paternity fraud, remove your name from the acknowledgement of paternity document. You signed it under false pretenses. You may have lied about your ongoing affair,
saying that Aaliyah is not your daughter. I don't care what. Apparently, it's through several of her friends. That
they're
maybe
not any
she's
kind of friends of mine, Your Honor. If they're going around talking behind my back.
These accusations had no reason other than the fact that they had, this child does not look anything like you. You need to start doing a little bit of investigation.
Well, yes, I had a relationship with a man that I had met when I was very young. I met him when I was 18 years old.
She had this affair with this person for 15 years. I've only been with her for 8. So she's been cheating on me literally the entire 8-year span that we were together, including the time of our first child.
When the truth enters the courtroom, it never arrives quietly. It walks in with consequences, with broken trust, with questions that have waited years for answers. And in a case where a DNA test becomes the final voice, everyone involved learns that truth changes everything. This description begins inside a courtroom presided over by Judge Lauren Lake, where emotions feel heavier than the walls can hold. The situation involves a complicated divorce case, where accusations of cheating, deception, unresolved resentment, and a deeply personal question about paternity have surfaced. The individuals in court are attempting to find justice, closure, understanding, and in some cases, forgiveness. This is not just a legal proceeding. It is a confrontation with years of silence, secrets, and emotional wounds. The case centers on a man who believes he may have been misled about the paternity of a child he has raised and loved. He has come to the court because of doubts that have grown louder over time, influenced by conversations, rumors, old messages, and the heavy weight of betrayal. The woman who once shared a relationship with him and later entered into marriage acknowledges that she made mistakes, particularly regarding an ongoing affair or emotional involvement that began before the couple formed a family. The issue now is not only whether the relationship can survive, but also whether the foundation of the family itself was built on truth. Judge Lauren Lake listens carefully as both sides express their pain. She is experienced in cases where DNA testing changes lives, and she understands that the truth can be both devastating and liberating. The courtroom atmosphere reflects the emotional weight. Every statement is layered with history, memory, regret, and the lingering question of what will happen next. The man describes how he has always believed himself to be the father, taking responsibility, showing love, and being present. Yet over time, suspicions began to grow. Rumors spread through friends, messages were exchanged, and pieces of the past resurfaced. These suspicions, once quiet, grew until they could no longer be ignored. The man explains that he reached this point not to punish anyone, but because he can no longer bear uncertainty. He wants to know the truth not only for himself, but also for the child involved. He believes that people regret taking a DNA test, not because of the results themselves, but because the truth cannot be undone. And once revealed, it permanently alters the relationships of everyone connected. The woman stands in the courtroom with visible emotion. She acknowledges dishonesty in her relationship. She explains her reasons for staying silent: fear, shame, confusion, and the belief that revealing everything earlier would have destroyed the relationship entirely. She insists that, although she was unfaithful emotionally, and in some periods physically, she has always believed that the child in question truly belongs to the man standing across from her. She expresses that she has lived with the weight of her decisions for years, and she has come to the court now because she wants to repair what she broke. Her position is not to defend her past behavior, but to assert her certainty regarding paternity. Judge Lauren Lake pauses often to clarify legal terminology, emotional claims, and the difference between moral mistakes and legal wrongdoing. The court discusses the concept of justice in jurisprudence, where justice is not solely about right and wrong, but also about clarity, acknowledgement, and responsibility. The judge acknowledges that deception within a relationship can be deeply damaging, but emphasizes that legal decisions involving paternity require exact evidence, not emotional assumptions. During the explanations, references are made to how evidence is evaluated in law and how adverse inference in evidence act principles work when one party appears to hide or withhold information. Judge Lauren Lake explains that in family law, the role of the court is not only to determine biological truth, but to consider the emotional well-being of the child. Therefore, while the courtroom discusses betrayal, suspicion, loyalty, and heartbreak, the core focus is the child who may be affected by the outcome. The case also echoes discussions seen in the Game Changing Attorney podcast, where the distinction between legal outcomes and emotional healing is emphasized. The individuals in this courtroom must confront the fact that the law can confirm paternity, but it cannot repair trust or restore broken intimacy. Legal truth is one thing, emotional truth is another. Similarly, the tone is reminiscent of the Divorce Course podcast, where layers of misunderstandings and emotional injuries are examined from different perspectives. The man further explains that while he may have forgiven past mistakes, what he cannot reconcile is the uncertainty of fatherhood. He expresses that if the DNA test confirms that he is the father, he wants to continue being present. However, if it proves otherwise, he cannot continue living in a family where the foundation feels false. The woman expresses fear. Fear of losing her family, fear of judgment, and fear of what her admission may cost her emotionally. Yet she also expresses acceptance of responsibility, noting that healing cannot begin without truth. In doing so, she echoes the tone seen in Celebrate Recovery testimonies, where individuals confront deep personal failures in order to move forward. Judge Lauren Lake points out that courtrooms are not places where families are destroyed, but where hidden truths are finally spoken. She notes that many cases involving child support, parental rights, and Supreme Court precedents come down to establishing clarity. The courtroom is not there to punish someone for betrayal, but to establish legal and biological facts. The court acknowledges how adoption stories' full episodes often reflect similar emotional themes. Love, identity, belonging, and uncertainty. Whether biological or adoptive, parenting is a bond shaped not only by DNA, but by nurturing, time, and devotion. However, in this specific case, determining biological fatherhood is necessary for legal clarity and emotional closure. The discussion then shifts into how the uncertainty has affected the child. The man describes emotional conflict, wanting to stay, wanting to walk away, wanting to protect the child, but not wanting to live a lie. The woman describes late-night guilt, anxiety, and the fear of losing everything. Both acknowledge that the child deserves stability and truth. This description continues with the realization that the DNA test is the turning point. Everyone in the courtroom understands that once the envelope is opened, lives will change in irreversible ways. It is not just a scientific test. It is the final voice in a story shaped by mistakes, love, loyalty, resentment, and hope. The emotions in the courtroom grow heavier as Judge Lauren Lake prepares to share the results. The silence before the truth is powerful. It is the silence of years collapsing into one moment. The silence of two adults bracing themselves for whatever comes next. And here, this first section ends before the results are revealed, leaving the emotional tension in place. As the courtroom sits in silence, everyone present understands that the moment of truth is approaching. The weight of the situation is not only emotional but also legal and deeply personal. Judge Lauren Lake holds the sealed DNA test results, and the atmosphere in the room becomes noticeably still. There is no noise, no shifting, no side whispers. Every heart in the room is poised, anticipating clarity that has been postponed for years. This pause feels like a crossroads. For some, the DNA test represents validation. For others, it represents confrontation with consequences they hoped would never come. Even though everyone understands that truth is necessary for healing, the uncertainty before the revelation feels overwhelming. The emotional state of both individuals involved is fragile, complex, and deeply human. The man who has loved and raised the child carries a mix of anticipation and dread. The possibility that the child may not be biologically his challenges not only his identity as a father, but his personal history, his sacrifices, and the emotional connection he has formed. It is not merely a question of genetics. It is a question of belonging, memory, and emotional devotion. He is thinking of the child who calls him father, of the nights he comforted the child, of the milestones he celebrated. For him, fatherhood has been lived, experienced, and felt. Yet the courtroom requires certainty, and emotional truth is not enough to establish legal paternity. The woman stands quietly as well. Her posture shows the internal conflict she carries. Although she has admitted to infidelity and dishonesty, she has remained steadfast in one belief, that the child in question is biologically fathered by the man standing across from her. Her tears are not simply guilt-driven. They reflect fear of losing the family she has known, fear of public judgment, and fear of the long-term consequences of her choices. She is aware that her past actions undermined trust and stability, but she is also aware that the DNA test could either validate her truth or permanently alter her life. Judge Lauren Lake understands this dynamic deeply. In her courtroom, she has witnessed many individuals approach similar moments. She knows that DNA results do not just confirm biological facts. They shift emotional realities, redefine family structures, and influence futures. She clarifies to all present that no matter the results, the court will act in the best interest of the child. She speaks about the stage in divorce case proceedings, where emotional testimonies intersect with legal requirements. She emphasizes that while the relationship between the adults has fractured, the child remains innocent and deserving of stability, clarity, and emotional safety. The court also recognizes how conversations like this are often explored in the Divorce Course podcast, where couples facing separation confront long-held grievances, miscommunications, misunderstandings, and losses that accumulate over time. The court's role is not to repair love or restore trust, but to provide structure and resolution where emotional strain has caused uncertainty. Legal processes and emotional healing often run parallel but separate tracks. When Judge Lauren Lake opens the envelope, she reads the results carefully. The result confirms that the man is indeed the biological father of the child. This confirmation delivers a wave of emotional release across the courtroom. The man reacts with powerful relief, not because he doubted his love for the child, but because the uncertainty has been resolved. The emotional burden he carried, rooted in doubt and vulnerability, dissolves into clarity. The woman is overcome with visible gratitude, not in triumph, but in validation. Her certainty was proven true, and now her efforts to repair trust have a foundation to stand on. The acknowledgement that the man is the biological father, however, does not erase the harm caused by years of dishonesty. Judge Lauren Lake explains this clearly. She reinforces that relationships are built upon trust, and when trust is broken, the rebuilding process is slow, painful, and requires sincere accountability from both individuals. The question is no longer about biological truth, but about whether the relationship can be restored beyond legal confirmation. The man expresses that although the paternity result brings relief, the emotional scars of betrayal remain. This is where the concept of justice in jurisprudence becomes relevant. Justice is not simply about proving what is true. It is about acknowledging harm, assigning responsibility, and providing structure for healing or closure. The court cannot require forgiveness. It can only encourage clarity and honest communication. The woman acknowledges that the foundation of their relationship now requires rebuilding from the ground up. She recognizes that repairing trust will require time, transparency, and consistent actions rather than promises. The situation reflects themes often discussed in Celebrate Recovery testimonies, where individuals confront their mistakes openly and work toward rebuilding their lives and relationships with humility and patience. In this courtroom, however, Emotional healing is separate from legal outcome. The legal process has provided clarity about paternity, but the future of the relationship is now in the hands of the two individuals involved, not the court. Judge Lauren Lake outlines this distinction carefully. She also explains how similar dynamics are seen in adoption stories' full episodes, where biological connection is only one part of family structure. Parenting, whether biological or adoptive, requires presence, care, consistency, emotional availability, and accountability. The court also discusses financial responsibility. In cases involving biological children, particularly when separation or divorce is involved, courts consider child support obligations in accordance with Supreme Court precedents. Because the child has been confirmed biologically his, the man maintains legal parental rights and responsibilities. This includes emotional and financial involvement, regardless of the relationship status between the adults. The courtroom discussion extends to the emotional needs of the child. Children are deeply affected by the behavior, communication, and emotional tension between adults. Judge Lauren Lake emphasizes the importance of shielding children from conflict, uncertainty, and emotional instability. The adults must ensure that the child is not exposed to conversations or behaviors that communicate distrust, resentment, or blame. Emotional health in children is heavily influenced by the way adults handle conflict. The man reflects on how his parenting role is not dependent on the nature of his romantic relationship with the woman. He understands that his bond with the child is meaningful and develops from daily love, involvement, and commitment. However, he also acknowledges that rebuilding trust within the romantic relationship will require patience, willingness, and vulnerability. He expresses uncertainty about whether he can restore emotional closeness, even though he intends to remain in the child's life. The woman expresses her commitment to repairing trust, not only for the relationship but for the emotional stability of their child. She understands that consistent honesty, behavioral accountability, and willingness to answer difficult questions are necessary steps moving forward. Her emotional response reflects a desire not to lose the family she has built, even if it requires difficult internal work. Judge Lauren Lake expresses that healing after betrayal is a personal process. Some couples rebuild and emerge stronger. Others find closure and choose separation while maintaining respectful co-parenting. The key factor is honest communication and recognizing that people regret taking a DNA test only when they hope the truth would remain hidden. Once the truth is revealed, life moves forward. This portion of the case concludes with an understanding. The facts have been clarified. Now begins the emotional work of navigating the future. With the DNA results now confirmed in the courtroom, the atmosphere begins to shift. What was once dominated by tension and uncertainty now moves into a phase of reflection and forward planning. Judge Lauren Lake emphasizes that while the paternity question is settled, the deeper emotional and relational challenges require time, honesty, and commitment to healing. The individuals in court must now consider what comes next, how to rebuild communication, how to redefine boundaries, and how to ensure the emotional well-being of the child who remains the center of this case. The man, now confirmed as the biological father, feels a mixture of relief and exhaustion. The emotional toll of questioning his connection to the child has been heavy, and the clarity brings both comfort and sadness. He reflects on how doubt slowly erodes trust. Even when love is strong, his struggle was never simply about biology. It was about honesty, security, and identity. The return of certainty does not erase the pain of betrayal, but it allows him to take the first step toward healing with a clearer understanding of reality. The woman also processes the result with a deep emotional response. She feels vindicated in her claim and grateful that the test confirms what she always believed. Yet she remains aware that the court's confirmation does not undo the mistakes made in the relationship. Her acknowledgement of her past choices is sincere, and she recognizes that rebuilding trust is not something that can be achieved quickly. She understands that change is not proven by promises, but by consistent behavior over time. Her effort to accept accountability reflects a willingness to engage in emotional work, even when it is uncomfortable. Judge Lauren Lake begins discussing the legal implications surrounding the next steps. Since paternity is confirmed, all legal parental rights and responsibilities remain intact. The man continues to have the right to be involved in the child's life, including decision-making regarding health, education, emotional care, and future planning. This includes child support, which follows state guidelines and Supreme Court precedent to ensure the child's needs are prioritized. The judge explains that financial responsibility is not viewed as punishment, but as shared commitment to the child's stability and development. The judge also provides guidance about co-parenting, particularly in relationships that have been damaged by betrayal. She emphasizes that adults must protect the child from emotional spillover caused by unresolved tension. If the relationship continues, rebuilding must involve open communication, counseling, emotional accountability, and a shared understanding of expectations. If the relationship does not continue, respectful co-parenting must be established with clear boundaries and consistent routines. The child should never feel responsible for mediating conflict or carrying emotional burdens that belong to the adults. This phase of the discussion touches the same themes, explored in the Game Changing Attorney podcast, where legal professionals speak about the balance between law and emotional reality. The courtroom represents structure, clarity, and formality, while relationships are messy, layered, and deeply personal. In family cases, law and emotion are intertwined, and resolutions must address both components with care. The judge takes time to acknowledge the emotional weight of regret. She speaks to the idea that people regret taking a DNA test only when they fear the truth. When the truth becomes clear, it may be heavy, but it allows lives to move forward. The uncertainty, not the result, is what harms relationships the most. Clarity may be painful, but it allows healing to begin. The woman's expression reflects this understanding. She acknowledges that her fears about losing her family were tied not only to the results, but to the emotional consequences of her past choices. She now knows that moving forward requires more than saying sorry. It requires earning trust repeatedly through transparency, patience, and emotional accountability. She understands that emotional wounds heal slowly, and there are no shortcuts. Judge Lauren Lake addresses the man directly as well. She explains that while he has every right to feel hurt and cautious, his sense of identity as a father has been reaffirmed. The bond he formed with the child is real, meaningful, and remains intact. The truth allows him to move forward with confidence, knowing that his love, effort, and involvement were never misplaced. Rebuilding trust in a relationship, however, may require professional support, emotional processing, and clear boundaries. The court now considers the long-term picture. Relationships change after revelations like these, and the couple must determine whether they will rebuild their romantic connection or transition into strictly co-parenting roles. Judge Lauren Lake emphasizes that either choice can be valid and healthy. The key is emotional clarity and mutual respect. Many couples discussed in the Divorce Course podcast demonstrate that relationships after betrayal can either transform into something stronger or shift into respectful separation without bitterness. The success lies in honest communication and willingness to accept responsibility. The conversation extends to broader reflections on justice, not simply as a court ruling, but as a personal process. The concept of justice in jurisprudence reminds the court that justice is not only about assigning right and wrong, it is about restoring balance, clarity, and fairness. In cases involving family, justice also includes emotional truth and the protection of the child's well-being. The judge touches on the subject of emotional growth and personal recovery. Many individuals who share their journeys in Celebrate Recovery testimonies describe similar themes: accepting responsibility, confronting the consequences of past choices, learning to communicate honestly, and rebuilding trust with time and consistency. Emotional healing is not about forgetting the past, but learning from it. This case also resonates with the themes found in Adoption Stories full episodes. where family identity is often shaped by love, nurturing, and commitment rather than solely genetics. While biological truth matters legally, emotional truth forms the foundation of family identity. In this case, the child has been raised with love and involvement, and that relationship remains intact, regardless of the relational complexities between the adults. The judge concludes her guidance by acknowledging the courage it takes to face difficult truths publicly. Many couples facing internal breakdown attempt to hide their challenges, hoping to avoid judgment or shame. However, confronting truth openly allows healing to begin and prevents further emotional damage, particularly to children. As the proceedings come to an end, the emotional atmosphere in the courtroom has shifted. There is still pain, still uncertainty, still fear, but there is also clarity, direction, and the possibility of rebuilding. The individuals involved leave the courtroom knowing that the next steps will require emotional maturity, ongoing communication, and patience. Healing is not immediate. Trust is rebuilt slowly, but truth provides the foundation that makes healing possible. The closing sentiment echoes the central message of this case. Truth changes everything, but it also clears the path for what comes next.